Hello, this is 9 to 5, a financial independence podcast where we focus more on the retire early side of FIRE. I'm Josh. I retired, I hate that word, at 48 after 25 years in the corporate world. I'm joined by my co host Elliot, who is near the end of full time employment as well. We share our paths to early retirement, challenges that we've faced, and what life looks like on the other side, including struggles and opportunities that life keeps throwing our way. We're an ad-free podcast, but if you would like to support us in any way, we have links in the show notes and video description for books and other products that we use and love, like Mint Mobile and Upside. Thanks for tuning in. Let's kick it to the episode. So, Elliot, is the holiday Christmas vacation, is that over for you after today?
It is. I go back to work tomorrow.
Oh man, how you feeling about that?
Oh yeah, just loving every minute of thinking about the work. The Sunday scaries after 2 weeks or thereabouts is very real.
Yeah, you had a couple extra days with bereavement, right? So it's kind of extended beyond what you had originally planned.
Well, yeah, because originally I actually didn't. I had burned so many vacation days throughout the year that I wasn't really planning to take any time or very little time around the holidays. And then yeah, with my grandmother's passing, then I did have the opportunity to take some extra time with family. So that was not a good reason to take some time, but good to have the time regardless.
Yeah, kind of a counterpoint, I guess, that I'll share, not to rub it in by any means at all, but just to give a little bit of context. I, I used to take off at least a week, if not more than that, around the holidays. So typically right before Christmas Eve and then through the New Year. And so I would be typically going back to work tomorrow as well. But I remember I was telling Lori this the other day. I remember that in the years past, I was always trying to put a list of things that I wanted to accomplish during that week. And it was usually something woodworking related or some type of project around the house. And inevitably, I would run out of time before I would complete a project. And it was always getting to that last couple of days and then ultimately feeling like I didn't really have a good balance of downtime, rest and relaxation, along with of course the hustle and bustle of the holiday season, and then getting those things completed that I wanted to. And this year, that's not been the case. I can say that. It was one day, I think it was like Thursday or Friday of last week, as we were nearing the end of when she goes back to work tomorrow too. And I thought, man, I'm actually not feeling those Sunday scaries or that end of the holiday season kind of blues, I guess, if you will. That was always something that I noticed too. It's like you have all that build up and lead into the holidays where it's like an exciting time. Things are like work things are slowing down, and then personal stuff is ramping up a little bit. But this year it almost feels like it's been a couple of months of the holiday season as opposed to just a mad dash of trying to fit everybody and everything in such a short time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. I gotta imagine without having the burden of having to run back to work, it actually feels like the time is actually slowing down, and you get to enjoy all of those holidays, and not think about, oh hey, I've got this deadline, or hey, this activity needs to be done by this time. And so it's, I feel like I'm pretty good at leaving work at work and kind of turning my brain off, so to speak, for those work related items. But yeah, I mean, still, even I'm susceptible to all the same things of starting to think, oh yeah, hey, come tomorrow morning, here's what I know I need to be doing. I know I have kind of a major deadline by mid-February, so starting to crank the motors up there and say, what items do I really have to get done here in the next month and a half?
Yeah, the one thing that I'm not looking forward to as Lori goes back to work tomorrow is that we'll be transitioning back to getting up at 5 a.m. And the last 2 weeks, it's been like 7:30. I think there was a couple of 8 a.m. wake up times, which is just really outside of the normal for me and her. and it's been lovely. And she's starting to talk a little bit more about entertaining the idea of part time again, and trying not to pressure or persuade too much there. But she's starting to think about it, which would be 3 days a week for her, and then 4 days off, which would be awesome. We could just only wake up to the 5 a.m. alarm 3 days a week as opposed to four. Would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how you guys do it. I mean, I say that kind of in jest because, of course, even when I'm going into the office, I'm like a 5:30, 5:20 wake up. So it's not vastly different,
No.
but I have not been the person that gets up immediately goes and works out like I know you guys do. So, yeah, I mean, to to reflect on today's wake up time for me, Dawn was very kind and let me sleep in a little bit. So I slept in until 8:15. So to put
Wow.
that in perspective,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very nice.
You just barely made it to this 10 a.m. recording then.
That's right. Just roll out of bed, go shower, and walk into the studio, so to speak.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I think that, and we don't exercise immediately after we wake up. We do have our slow mornings where we have a cup of coffee, and it's usually about an hour later that we get started with our exercising. And that's actually started to slip a little bit for both of us. And she's like now thinking, I need to get moving a little bit faster because things are like, even before we got to the holiday break, she was not getting started until like 6:30 or so, and starting to feel like she's rushed too much in the mornings. So she's like, we got to get moving a little bit quicker. We got to get started at 6. So I'm like, oh man.
It just sounds like no pressure, Lori, but you can fix that reason for being rushed.
Yeah.
So,
Well, hey, maybe to a little bit lighter topic, I was curious about your Amazon cancellation. We talked about that briefly after we stopped recording last week, and it really got my wheels turning. And I looked into what we pay, and we're absolute fools here. We pay the monthly 14.99 for Amazon Prime, and I know it says very clearly that we could be paying the annual Prime membership for, I think it's 40, we would have a $40 a year savings if we did that. And then I started looking at it because I think I was under the impression for some reason that the Prime essentially cut taxes and gave 2 day shipping. And I don't think it does either one of those things.
so it does cut the shipping cost. So I have noticed, yeah, because I thought it was just free 2 day shipping. I have noticed just in certain cases where I went and looked at a price of something on Amazon and went through, all right, all the way to the point where I was going to buy it, and it was like, okay, here's a $7 shipping charge. Now I think that also it very much depends on who is the seller, because on Amazon, of course, you have one sellers that are directly from Amazon versus other merchants on Amazon that are selling their products, and so you're getting a little bit of kind of like the. Did you ever buy and sell things on eBay?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, where you have every little seller gets to make up whatever prices they feel like for a lot of those things. So it could have been that particular example, but yeah, I mean, it certainly doesn't stop taxes. Taxes are still charged. There were years ago where I think that was true, where they weren't charging any taxes, but it's been a lot of years since that's been true.
Okay. And you cut the cord, so to speak, about a week or so ago. Has it been about that long?
Yeah, about that long.
And what was the main driver for you deciding to do away with it?
Yeah, just the belief that we really don't need to be funding. Like we don't agree with the principles really behind Amazon in a lot of cases. I'm not gonna sit here and demonize everything that they do. I mean, I know a lot of their money actually comes from Amazon Web Services, which I've used in my own career. It's a very good product, but they also know it's a good product. So, but like we would rather support our local community. So a good example would have been around the holidays. We went and purchased some books as a gift for Christmas, going to a local bookstore as opposed to going to Amazon. Yeah, like sure, it costs us probably a few extra dollars, but we're okay with making that investment into our local community. Of course, like some of those increased prices are, taxes that go back into the place that you actually live. And so I think this kind of goes all the way back to the point that we just talked about is, the thing that we care about is the people that we live with and love and our friends. And then you kind of expand that out to your community after that is kind of that next circle that we care about. So I would much rather that money be going into my community, into business owners in my surrounding area that I'd rather build a relationship with than, sorry, Jeff Bezos. Like, I think you've got enough money these days.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. And I, since you mentioned it to me last week, it's been on the back of my mind like daily. And I was considering running the idea past Lori, getting her take on it. I think initially she would be like, "What?" It's because it's just become so ingrained and like this is what you need. And after looking at it a little closer, I realized that the majority of the perks that you get from or benefits that you get from being a Prime member, we don't even take advantage of, like a Grubhub discount. I mean, I don't think we've ever used Grubhub, and I mentioned before that we never watch anything on Prime, like ever. And there were a couple other things that I didn't even realize were benefits that we just do not use. So, and then going back to your point on supporting your local community more than the global, I guess, community, is that Lori had a book that she was looking at and she had it in the Amazon cart. And we were at a local bookstore just a few days ago and she picked it up. She's like, "Oh, I've been wanting to get this." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I think this is the exact number." She said it was $30 at the bookstore, but it was $20 on Amazon. And she's like, "Oh, I'm going to get it on Amazon, to save the $10." But kind of reframing that to your point of, well, yeah, but you're supporting the local business and how many books do we actually purchase? Is it really worth, I can't even do the quick math, 15 times 12? I should be able to do that in my head.
You're not alone. I can't do it in my head either.
$180. I mean, it's definitely worth it to cut that expense out of our annual budget and maybe be a little bit more intentional with our purchases. And so what if we spend an extra $10 here and there?
Yeah, and don't kick yourself too hard. I was also on the monthly plan and I had the added bonus of also paying I think $2.99 for no commercials on Prime, which we used very very infrequently. So, yeah, we got the sweet $18 a month as well. So, yeah, I mean, like you're saying. I mean, how frequent are those transactions that, yeah, it may seem like sticker shock of, oh, hey, this is a 33% increase over, you know, or this, I guess that's technically 50% more, right? That 50% increase over that other price, but then you also got to account for, yeah, they're still going to charge you taxes, and the taxes are going to be different in the location, and you got it right now, and you've already made your trip. If you want to get, ecological, you've got all the impact to the world and all the shipping that takes place to get that box to your house. I specifically had an example where I think I was kind of irritated. I don't remember if I talked about this. I had a soccer ball that I bought for my daughter right around Black Friday time. And it wasn't any huge discount or anything like that. She just needed a new size ball for her indoor soccer league. And I purchased it, I ordered it on November 30th, and, you know, should have been 2 day shipping. 2 day shipping didn't arrive. Then it was like the next day, and then it kicked it down all of a sudden a week. I'm like, what's going on here? Then they come back and say, hey, do you still want to have this? We're having supply chain issues. I'm like, yes, I still want this. Okay. They give me a new time. It just, the can kept on getting kicked. And eventually it's like, yeah, you know, we realized that we pay this $180 or whatever it is for this 2 day shipping unless we don't, right? And so tried to just decide to vote with my dollars and say thanks but no thanks.
Yeah. And everything can be viewed as a test. And you could certainly go right back to it if you got to the point where it's like you see the value there. But did you ever receive that ball?
No.
Wow.
Nope. So they came back and did the whole supply chain issue again, and eventually Don's like, no, just
Forget it.
I mean it was over a month. I think we purchased it 2 days ago. So I just went
Okay.
in person to a store. I probably paid $1 different
Hmm.
than what it would have. I mean, a different ball, but it was exactly what my daughter picked out in a store. She was happy with it, and whatever.
Yeah.
I once again I supported a local business as opposed to Amazon. Now, I will say that local business was a chain, so we
Eh,
can't can't say everything is just sunshine and rainbows on the other side either.
yeah, and I was going to say that another downside that I see is that I really just do not like shopping, in person very much. And I really appreciate just being able to go online and click and have it arrive a couple days later. And I noticed that a lot of times, well, and I truly try to be ecological, mindful of the environmental impact, and I will try to, if I know we have multiple orders coming, I'll try to arrange to where they're all coming on the same day, which really negates the whole 2 day shipping anyway. And when it comes down to it, why are we so impatient anyway with these things? I mean, if we want it and need it bad enough, like you said, we could go to one of the local stores and pick it up. Nowadays, most of the things that you need, I think even in your case, the amp that you just purchased, you mentioned that you got it locally, and hopefully we sound a lot better because of that. We both have those now, but you were able to pick that up at nearly the same price, or maybe even you saved a couple dollars, I think you said. Wasn't neat if you bought it from Amazon like I did, I was like, "Oh, sweet, I'm gonna get it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow." But in reality, we've been chugging along here for 6 months without an amp. Why was I so eager to get that and then, turned around so quickly?
Because we needed that crystal clear sound, and it's going to impact so many more ears that are going to hear our wonderful voices, right, Josh?
I hope that's the case, Elliot. Time will tell.
Precisely.
Is there anything that you had that you wanted to chat about?
Yeah, I would say so. I know that you mentioned Lori talking about part time. As people all around you start to shift back into this frenetic speed that is American work culture, what's on the horizon for you? Do you have plans for these upcoming cold winter months, so to speak, that I know that you've referenced in a couple of our episodes?
Yeah, I do actually. I have a list of things that my rental properties need, and that's like a bittersweet type of situation for me where I think I mentioned on the real estate podcast that we had that I have really considered starting to at least think about, should I keep these things long term? And a couple of them were surprises. We put a new roof on one, which was not a surprise, but it was a big chunk of money. And then going back to how much we keep in our reserves, when we had that conversation a couple months ago on the withdrawal topic, that's kind of the reason why. When you have an outlay of $7,000 for a roof, that's what you need to have to support that as a real estate investor. But I have a couple projects that I need to do that are sort of, I guess, they need to happen pretty quickly. One is that when we had that massive change in temperature a couple of days ago, we went from a high of 78 one day to a low of 16 the next day. We had those winds that came through that were like 50 miles an hour. They blew over half of a fence line of a privacy fence on one of my properties. And the tenant is now kind of getting a little bit anxious because the next door neighbor has a dog and the dog now is no longer contained. And so I got to get busy on that in the next couple of days. And it's one of those situations where I weighed the options. I actually did contact a handyman and he gave me a bid. And I'm like, well, I can do it. The weather's going to be really nice with highs in the 60s. So, yes, I have a long list of things that are upcoming. That's one of them. And just continuing projects around our house. And I guess just trying to really kind of follow the season or the weather a little bit and do some outside stuff when the weather is nice. And we got plenty of stuff to do on our own home when the weather is cold. And of course, continuing with this podcast here. And I'm trying to remain motivated on my YouTube channel, which is more or less just a hobby project. It's not generating any income, and I don't look at it as a part-time work or anything like that. But I'm continuing to put content there and stick with it. Yeah, I mean, I am not bored by any means, and I have long lists of things that I want to do and things that I want to build for people and so on and so forth.
The list of lists continues, right?
It does. It does. Things get added quicker than they get removed.
That's that's a good thing to have. Is
I don't know. Is it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, do you feel so? I always used to joke around when I'd hear people say like, "Oh, when you retire, like I'm busier now than I did when I had a job," right? And do you feel that way now?
Sometimes, but I also have to remind myself that a lot of these things are either volunteer or I've said decided to say yes to them, such as the upcoming fence repair. I could spend the money and hire the guy to do it, and he would take a couple of days to do it as opposed to me taking a couple of days to do it. But it's one of those things that I'm just kind of weighing the kind of the risk reward situation. And from that aspect, yeah, it makes me feel a little bit busy, but at the same time, I kind of have the time to do it. And yeah, I might not be able to get to the next thing that was on my list, but that next thing wasn't necessarily any kind of emergency or priority. I mean, one of the just to kind of be more transparent with that, one of the next things that I have on my list is to insulate my garage ceiling. And Elliot, it's been on my list for 20 years. There's no reason that it's a priority at this point. So I mean,
Must be done, Josh.
that's how most of these things are that are on my list. They're just things that as I got closer, and we talked about this before, as I got closer to leaving full-time employment, I knew that I wanted my daily activities to resemble what my weekends looked like. And that's exactly what has happened. I do get into situations where I feel a little bit overwhelmed, but I'm just putting that pressure on myself. It's not coming from the outside, other than the occasional, very rare situation where a tenant might be looking for something specific. Or I had a lady contact me this morning. She said, "Hey, my heat's not working." Well, that's kind of something that I need to get some attention to. I probably won't look at it myself. I'll call a, a repair person to take a look at it, technician. It is something that I'll have to do to make the call, but it won't be, it's just something else that I have to do. And, most of the things are like, I can just add it to the list. I'll get to it when I get to it. Yeah. I'm as busy as I want to be. But then there's times too where I think going back to the beginning of our conversation here, time for me feels like it has really slowed down a lot. So you hear people say that they're busy, and you hear a lot of people say that time flies. And I remember you asked me the question a couple of weeks ago when we were nearing the end of the year. You said, "I can't believe it's Christmas already," or "I can't believe we're at this point in time." And you asked me if time had slowed down, and I think it kind of like caught me by surprise. I didn't really have a good answer for it at the time, but as I've been able to reflect on that and this time of year a little bit, the last 8 months feels like it's been years since I left full-time work. It does not feel like I had a full-time job just 8 months ago. And there was a couple of trips that we took throughout the year where we went before I left work. We traveled a little bit and then since, and it feels like it was years ago. And I think that goes back to there's a scientific term for it. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's essentially the novelty of new experiences that you've had over a period of time. When you look at probably like this last couple of weeks that you've been off work, you haven't been in the day-to-day grind. You've been experiencing some new things and talking to people or spending time with family. And that amount of time, even though it might seem like it went by pretty quickly because you're getting back to work, if you reflect on it a little bit later, it's going to seem like it was a longer period of time that you were off than what you really were, just because you had so many different things. And I think that's what I'm experiencing now, and I hope that continues. But yeah, it's just everything every day is a little bit different. So I think time has slowed down for me quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great to hear from my point of view, right? Is that's what you want in retirement is to feel like it's not just flying by, is you have all the time in the world to do whatever you want and you have the freedom to choose how you spend your time. So, like it is funny to me to hear some of the choices that you're having to make, like with your I, I would call a spade. Your previous side hustle now to main hustle of being, landlord, etc. That of course you've been landlord, you've been handyman, property manager, contractor, etc. throughout time, but now like I've seen your numbers. I know that the financial choice of you doing the work of repairing the fence isn't going to make or break anything, right? And so now you are making the choice of, well, yeah, I can make that number get a little bigger by doing the work myself, or I could pay somebody else to do it and ultimately still have the freedom of my time. So what is going to make me more content is it having a little bit more money? Is that going to make me feel better, or is it, hey, I get to do whatever I want with that time instead of having a little bit more money? And I'm not trying to sway you one way or another. I have been in the last 2 days. I've picked up Morgan Housel's new book, The Art of Spending Money, and I really like Morgan Housel's writing just in general, and it has been just just like his other book, very eye opening to just think about things a little bit differently and just try and think, what are we maximizing for? The same way with people, like tons of people like to refer to die with zero, is do I want to be the richest person in the graveyard? Is that going to make me happy? One of the concepts that he talked about, and this could be an episode all by itself, I'm sure, but he talked about the concept of a reverse obituary and saying, okay, how do we define like a life well lived, etc.? Do we want to say, hey, I don't think anybody says, hey, I owned a Lamborghini and I retired with $10 million. Like, you don't see those things in an obituary or a headstone or whatever else. It was, he was a loving father, spouse, sibling. He was kind to others. He was funny. He was witty. Those are the things, like he was generous. Those are the things that make the difference. And so I think that's the challenge I'm going to take on myself when I reach that time to where I have enough money, is to focus on all those things that, as morbid as it sounds, is create the obituary that I want, right?
You're giving me a lot to think about here, and I know you said you're not trying to sway me, but I'll go ahead and be very vulnerable and transparent here with this. scenario of the fence repair, just for context, and you can just give it back to me. Tell me how ridiculous this sounds, because as I say it out loud, you're gonna be like rolling your eyes. I know. So this is a private 8 foot or 6 foot privacy fence, whatever, that four sections of it blew down. The handyman took a look at it. He's like, I see four fence posts that need to be replaced. You'll need 4 bags of concrete, and we can reuse all the rest of the materials. Just those posts need to be replaced. And so minimal cost there with supplies. And he's like, I'll do it for $250. And I can already see this.
Yep, yep. You know what I'd say.
So I was talking through this with Lori yesterday, and she was asking me what I was going to do about it. And I was like, "Here, help me out." I said, "Here's the scenario." Gave her all the information, and I said, "I could easily go up there. Weather's going to be nice. I can go up there. It's about 45 minutes away or so." But it would take me 2 days because I know I'd have to go there and I would just set the posts and let the concrete cure and then go back the next day and attach the fencing. And she's like, "Well, do you really want to do that?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I mean, $250, do I want to spend that?" And, she's like, "Well, it's not a lot of money, but in my mind, here's the struggle that I'm dealing with is that we just got through the end of the year. We dwindled down that reserve quite a bit because we paid all of our property taxes. We just put on that new roof. We have a couple of other small things. Got this HVAC system that's suddenly not working. So like there's all this, I see it as money going out faster than it's coming in. And that's the hang up that I have. And the money that went out far exceeds $250. It's not like that is going to come in and like fix or offset the what just went out. But that's the thing that I think I still struggle with a little bit is just going, oh, yeah, $250. That's fine. I'm not going to waste my time driving up there back and forth twice and wasting a half a day. And I look at it as like it's an opportunity to save $250 instead of
Sure.
saving or offsetting my free time.
Yeah. Are you current on Choose FI right now?
Believe it or not, I have not listened to a podcast since early November.
Whoa, look at you. Well, I will say that, or actually, it wasn't even on Choose FI. It was on Mile High Five, but this was in reference to Brandon from The Mad Fientist just put out an episode like in mid-November, and it really was along the lines of the art of spending money, and very similarly, just talking about all these different inflection points, right? And the same way that you know you saw my reaction immediately when you said $250. I would say cut the check, be done with it. Like I mean, if I just talk about even without the repair or any of the materials, you're talking about 3 hours of your time just in transport time, just to get there and back twice. Then you have costs for materials. Then you have costs for the actual time. Like I get that you can save, but ultimately, like you don't need to save anymore. Like we already know that you have enough money to retire and for Lori to retire. Hint, hint, Lori. But I didn't say it. No, I'm only kidding. We know that you're there financially. So at this point, I mean, sure. To go back to the earlier diatribe, I guess you're getting a little bit more money. It makes you feel a little bit safer, I would imagine. But ultimately, you're there. I think you can relax. And this is a good segue into what I think should maybe be our next episode is I'll challenge us both to, I don't know if you have these numbers at your fingertips, but to kind of do a year-end review on our saving and our expenses for 2025. I think those are good things to know, especially you in this first year of kind of a transition to say, oh, hey, I felt like we were going to use the 4% rule like meticulously, and like I'm willing to guess that your spending is drastically lower than that 4%. And we know the caveat also being that hey, Lori's still working, and so like you can go even higher than that, but
Yeah,
it is what it is.
I will accept that challenge because I don't have those numbers at my fingertips. And I think that it would be interesting because in my mind, as I'm thinking through it, I'm thinking that we actually spent more than 4%, 4% from our investment for portfolio, that is. And I think that would be interesting to see. So yeah, I'll do that and we can talk about that. I don't know if I'll have it by the next time we get together, but certainly in one of our upcoming episodes.
Yeah. No, I think that'll be a good conversation.
I appreciate you challenging me and the $250. I'm going to reevaluate that because what I do psychologically is I will go through all of the things to make it seem like it's a worthwhile venture. I will say the things like, yeah, I can go up there and get started and in the early in the morning and you know be completed within 4 hours. I can drive home and on the way, maybe since the weather's gonna be nice, I can stop and take a hike somewhere, or I can go do a drive-by of another property just to check on things and see how things are going. So I can like rationalize all the benefits in my mind. But in reality, like you said, I'm leaving out the parts where I'm like driving the 3 hours that I don't really need to be, and then also stopping and picking up all the materials where while the handyman would do all that, there's a time component there. And yeah, so I'm starting to rethink that. There's other things that I could do with my time that might be a bit more enjoyable than putting up a fence.
I don't know, but it could be a new video on your YouTube channel, and maybe that's the 100 million view video. Evergreen.
That crossed my mind, at least putting some building some content around it, but it's not one of those things that people are going to be actively searching for or that hasn't been already done a thousand other times.
I was gonna say, even I have poured concrete into a post. So believe it or not, I think the videos are out there. So I
Yeah.
don't know how, yeah, to differentiate or put that moat around your YouTube channel, so to speak,
Yeah.
that video would necessarily provide.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't perform very well. I'd be spending all that time setting up and filming and editing and all that on the back end to get frustrated with, no views.
You put out a video, I will view it, Josh.
Oh, really? Well, have you seen? Because I've been putting out a video weekly now.
Oh no. All right, I'm put on the spot. I need
Yeah.
to.
Don't worry about it. Let the content find the audience as opposed to the other way around.
If you stuck around with us for this long, we really do appreciate it. This was a nice episode in my mind to talk about a bunch of different topics, but I think we've got a good plan going forward. As always, if you like the episode, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're on a podcast player of your choice, leave us a review. We do look at them. Hopefully, our sound sounds so much better now with this brand new amplifier. So, really do appreciate it. I'll leave closing thoughts with Josh here.
Well, I think it's been a good episode. It was just very off the cuff here. We didn't script anything and it didn't even have really too many bullet points. And I enjoyed the conversation and I'm hopeful that other people will as well. And
It's much more intuitive and is the way that you and I talk to each other on a normal
yeah,
basis. When we're not on camera, this is how we have conversations, is talk about what's really on our minds and what's important to us. And I think that's what, sorry to be selfish, but that's what's important to me. I don't know if it's always the same to Josh. Of course, we would love to educate and bring everybody along in our conversations, but I think the heart of what we always thought about establishing at the onset of the podcast was, hey, we have these conversations anyway. Let's just hit record and let's go and see how it works.
yeah, very well said.
As always. All right. Talk to you later,
All
Josh.
right. See you later, Elliot.